Hey there! Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Francine Sinclair. I've been around the block in the entrepreneurial world, creating and repurposing social media content for experts and CEOs. I know firsthand how it can feel lonely, especially when you're mixing your Christian faith into your business life. So I figured, why should we go it alone? Who said that faith and business can't mix? And that's where this podcast comes in. Join me as we meet influential Christian entrepreneurs who are showing us how to blend business and faith in a way that works. We're here to prove that you can express your faith without compromising your business success. On the Influential Christian Entrepreneur, you're not just listening, you're part of the gang. So let's start this journey together. Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover the inspiring stories and strategies of successful Christian entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing Joseph Gormley, a technology entrepreneur and podcaster who founded Keris Technology Inc. in March 2023. With a name reflecting Christian values and a mission to exceed customer expectations. From 2017 to 2022, he hosted the podcast Saving Fatherhood, interviewing key figures in family court reform, and engaging in political lobbying and biblical counseling. In December 2023, he launched Off the Cuff with Pastor Jeff Cleawer. Thank you. Aimed at helping Christians navigate cultural challenges and fostering cultural change. This new podcast supports their local church in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and the surrounding community. Gormley's career spans various roles, including evangelist and defibrillator marriage counselor, highlighting his diverse interest and commitment to faith-based initiative. Hey, Joe, nice to have you here again. How are you today?
So much better than I deserve. Thanks for asking.
Oh, my gosh. So let's pick up where we left off, shall we? Let's actually just kind of start again with, tell us about how did you become a Christian? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Man.
How did you grow up? Did you become a Christian after you grew up, or were you always a Christian?
I grew up a Catholic, went to Catholic high school, Catholic college, and through a series of unfortunate events, I got on my knees at age 35 and actually became a Christian.
So at age 35, what prompted that? I mean, I was a Catholic too. I left the Catholic church when I was like 18. So I think you were kind of like me, that you always thought you thought you were a Christian until you realized that you really weren't.
I really did. I really did think I was a Christian. And I think I think the common understanding that people who think they're Christians is that there's a God. They believe in God. I believed in God.
Mm-hmm.
I always believed there's a creator.
Yes.
I just never studied his word. Read some of it.
Right.
Never studied it.
Yeah.
And I never understood that I didn't have to do things to appease him. He was going to he actually literally just wanted my faithfulness, wanted me to trust in him and accept his good gifts, as opposed to trying to clean myself up before I came in front of him. I remember when I got married the first time, I was looking forward to going back to church after I got married, because I understood from my Catholic upbringing that I wasn't good enough to walk into that church and take communion as a Christian, as a Catholic. Mm-hmm. Taking communion's a super big deal, and there's so many trappings with that. Mm-hmm. You have to watch which kind of sins you do. You have to make sure you go to confession first, and if you don't confess, so all that nonsense. And I knew that I was living a sinful lifestyle, and I was okay with it because. Mm-hmm. all the other Catholics I knew were living that same kind of lifestyle. But I knew there was something that I just wasn't right with God. But I looked forward to that happening. And I got married. My ex-in-laws went to a church sporadically. I don't think they went that frequently. And it was really just my ex-mother-in-law. A bunch of guys from work that I knew from business were speaking into my life, planting seeds. And then my ex-mother-in-law invited me to church. I went, and I heard a couple of sermons that just blew me away from the book of Galatians, which is interesting. I'm studying that again right now. That just blew me away. Two topics really touched me. One was on suffering, and the other one was on legalism. As a Catholic, legalism was a big deal, and it just struck me. And I said, I'm going to stay here with these guys because they really know their Bible, and I really didn't learn much Bible growing up in Catholic church, But so I said, I'm going to still be a Catholic, but I'm going to sit here and learn from these guys because they know what they're talking about. Well, a year later, I had some business problems. I had a business partner who had a gambling problem. I had a pregnant wife who, when my business actually went south, and I got, just the whole partnership nightmare. If anybody's listening and they know of people who have had partnerships outside of their spouse, it's got to be a really great relationship or it's just not going to work. I would never do it again. So that business went south. My wife had a baby prematurely, 7.5 weeks early, and my daughter spent 30 days in the NICU, and she had to be born prematurely because my wife almost died. Her blood pressure was more than double what it's supposed to be. The upper number was over 100, or was it the lower 180? 180? Yeah, the lower number was like 200, something crazy like that. It was 19 years ago, but So anyway, she left me a month later. Actually 2 months later. 2 months later, she left me. 2 months after my daughter was born, so a month after my daughter came home, and didn't come back for 8 months. And during that 8 months, I was on my knees a lot. And I then had some Bible training, and I always say, I'm a Calvinist. I'm not. I don't apologize for that at all. I believe in the doctrines of grace and the sovereignty of God. And it was, I mentioned those sermons in Galatians. It was in those sermons in Galatians that he pulled my heart, and he pulled me and said, "Joe, you're gonna do what I want you to do." And irresistible grace is the Calvinistic doctrine. But I didn't really get on my knees till a year later. I really needed some suffering, and a lot of times, suffering for the Christian is a blessing. If you're not a Christian, suffering is a waste of time. But I was blessed by that, and that's when I started my real walk with Christ.
That's when you started at age 35. Amazing. Yep. And so ever since you have been walking closely with the Lord, and it blew my mind when I discovered, wow, the Bible, I should actually read my Bible. There's a lot of good advice in there. Like, it was sitting on my shelf all my life.
Yeah.
It's amazing how life-changing once you start to, not just when you read it the first time, but as you go back to it, it just keeps expanding because God keeps giving you, as you draw closer to her, he draws closer to you, and you start getting more and more what they call revelation. You start understanding the different meaning, from when you initially read it. So I find that such an encouraging thing, and so part of the reason, or actually, I think the whole reason of why I started this podcast was because the Holy Spirit told me to start this podcast, and the whole premise behind it, which was news to me because that had never happened to me before. But I had this pressing idea in my head that I needed to start a podcast, even though I did not want to. So that's a good way to know when it's God telling you something, when it's against what you want to do, but you're
Yeah.
because I did not want to do it. But I decided to be obedient. And one of the topic that we explore here is it okay to incorporate the faith into our business? I find that Christians, we have been really good at following what the world has told us to do in terms of keeping our faith separate from the business, from our work, from our business environment. For whatever reason, they tell us it will offend other people. We have to be accepting, and our religion is divisive, and we should not offend other people. It's also unprofessional. And quite frankly, I think they also imply, because many times they don't say it directly, it's just that it just looks stupid and it looks ridiculous and unprofessional. And so I know that a lot of Christians have taken a step back. Probably most Christians have taken a step back because they don't want to look like that person, they just kind of camouflage themselves, and you never know that they're Christians until they tell you explicitly in a private conversation, usually. But we have really worked on blending with the world. And so I want to know what your opinion is in terms of, should we as Christians and entrepreneurs explicitly profess our faith in the business environment, in the marketplace, or should we not? And do you do it?
So I think it's got to be obvious to a thinking Christian that at this point, God has forced our hand. The Fortune 500 have taken sides, and they are on the side of Satan, and they are pursuing evil all across the board. And 100 years ago, they pursued a relationship with Christians because it was the culturally acceptable thing to do. Now, the culturally acceptable thing to do is 180 degrees from what God stands for. And I think God's forcing our hand. We don't have a choice but to do what we have to do, and I think the really sad thing is that a Christian would promote the idea that Jesus can be neutral when it's very clear from Scripture he is not neutral. I mean, you're really not a Christian; you're a deist if you believe that. And there's a lot of slandering of history and historical facts. Our schools teach us garbage about history. Yeah. We are, first of all, in 1789. This country was signed a new constitution, and that included the Bill of Rights, that included the First Amendment, which has 5 freedoms in it, one of which is freedom of religion, has 2 components. No one can mess with my religion, and the government can't establish a religion at the federal level. Now, that establishment clause is so important. So important. It tells us, but you got to look at history. The reason why it was at the federal level they didn't want to establish a religion is because all 13 independent nations that were part of the United Nations of America, let's not use the word states because we've changed the definition, right? We've changed the definition of state to be a territory or a province. It's not. It's a state is like the state of France, the state of Great Britain, the state of New Jersey. Right? The state of Florida. We are independently run nations, and we were united for a purpose, and that was to defend, to do what Romans 13 says, and that is to bear the sword against foreign enemies. We have no choice. We have no choice. I just talked too long.
No, that's really good. That's really good because a lot of people think that a lot of people think that we're a democracy, and we're actually not. We're a constitutional republic, aren't we?
Amen.
And so democracy is mob rule, and
it is.
there's just so many things that they have been teaching us, so much garbage they've been teaching us, that we have completely forfeited our, I guess, position in the hierarchy. It's God, man, right?
Democracy is discrimination against the minority.
Right. Against the minority. But the government, so it's God, man, society, and then the government. And the government seems to have pushed itself a notch. And it seems like now people are below government. We are serving government instead of the other way around. And it's because in our schools, they don't teach us anything.
I actually would tweak your triad there, which I kind of like. So I think in the Bible, I think it's not specifically, and look up this chapter, but I think God establishes three segments of society that each have limited powers and are not supposed to overlap each other. The government has certain specific powers, and it's not supposed to overlap the other two entities, which are the family and the church. The church has specific responsibilities. There was a lot of debate, and it is, if you read the debates they had prior to signing the Constitution, they are very clear on a lot of topics. Like, for one, the federal government has absolutely no role, none, in charity, nor does the state government have a role in charity. Very clear. And the reason they didn't want that is because they historically it always caused massive corruption. And the Social Security Act, people think it's a nice retirement plan. It's not. It's a weapon of the state. It's a slush fund to spend money on anything they want. In fact, it's
legalized theft.
Well, all taxation that it violates God's law is legalized theft, which is the majority of it. And when an entity doesn't have the authority that they're supposed to have, they shouldn't be taxing anything, and they should never tax higher than what God asked for, which is 10%. We would do backflips to get a 10% across the board tax.
Right.
We'd all want 15.
Just so many things. So going back to, why do you think that we have stopped Christians in the market? Because I'm thinking about specifically Billy Graham. I don't know what year he said that the next big move of God will be in the marketplace. But, it's hard to find Christians in the marketplace. They're not out there. Very few of us are out there, publicly professing our faith, telling people we're Christians. Many Christians say, well, it has nothing to do with work. It doesn't have anything to do with the problem I solve for my clients.
Yeah.
And so how do we integrate faith and work?
So I'll answer your first question, which was, and then which was why. And I think a lot of people have bought into the idea of secularism as being a sufficient place for Christians to hang out and not offend people, because they want to make sure that they can sell as many people as possible on whatever they're selling, and they want to participate in the society as much as possible. So they take a secular position, right? How many Christians out there, people who profess belief in God, think that they can take a middle-of-the-road position on abortion, saying it's okay to have laws that protect people who want to kill their babies, just as long as I don't do it, then I'm not sinning. Well,
right.
That's just wrong. That's just a lie. So you can't have that position. The Bible is very clear that the people that know their God will stand firm and take action. That's I just learned that because my pastor challenged me on it. Daniel 11:6. So it says the people that know their God will stand firm and take action. We're not supposed to be passive. So on our podcast, I did a podcast today with my pastor, and two of my pastors. The podcast is called Tearing Down High Places. We're on our 4th episode today, and we've had some early big success. Actually, we had 2,700 people watch the 3rd episode, which was exciting. And we talked today about that Super Bowl ad that ran this weekend, which is nothing but
he gets us.
Yeah, he gets us, which was fine. We kind of go through in our podcast. We kind of go through the different still shots they had in that video and that commercial. And if we didn't know that they were trying to say, which they say at the end, Jesus wasn't about hate, they didn't put that there. If Jesus didn't teach hate, well, who's saying he taught hate? Who are they addressing? Who are they even talking to? So anyway, we got into all that. But, to answer your second question is what can we do? Individual Christians have to stand up and just be unapologetic about who they are. And we have to teach people that God has certain characteristics. His characteristics are immutable. They do not change. Mm-hmm. Every Bible chapter, verse, word is important. And we need to plumb that book to understand who he is and what he wants us to do. And we have to hold all people accountable to that. So it's not enough. So I think a lot of Christians, this is back to the why question instead of what we need to do, I guess. But I think a lot of Christians, they find comfort in saying, well, I'm willing to follow God, but I'm not going to tell my neighbor to follow God. I don't want to be judgmental, right? It's not judgmental. It's loving your neighbor to inform him that God let us know if we live this way, we'll be blessed. And if we don't, we'll be cursed. I mean, that's just a fact. If you sow seeds, evil seeds, you're going to have an evil plant, right? That's just the way it happens. You choose to sin, you choose to suffer. Do we want our neighbors to suffer? No. So we're going to tell them, listen, this is how you got to live. Same thing with your customers, whatever business you're in. Now, I did something in my business. I didn't want people to think I was selling Bibles, right? So I didn't want to come out and be like, Joe's House of Grace, right? That sounds like a church, whatever it is. So I said, but I want my company to have a Christian foundation. And for those who have ears, let them hear. But I try and talk about God whenever I can, whenever it's appropriate with my customers. I sign all my emails, blessings, and my signature, and just make sure that people know that if they're having a problem, I'm a guy they can talk to, because everyone wants prayer when they need it,
right?
Yeah, when they need it. When they finally figure out that they're not in control, they want prayer, and you just need to be there for them. And you can't be there for them if they don't know you're a Christian.
They don't know, right?
And the reality is, there's a lot of people that do very good things in this culture that are not Christians, but they've been taught good values from a Christian culture. Right. So we're still living off of those blessings. They've been taught right from wrong. The problem is they don't know, they can't justify right from wrong from an atheistic worldview. You can't say that, for example, if my neighbor feels like killing millions of people, I could say that's bad because God tells me that. Right. I also have a conscience, and my neighbor who's an atheist, he has a conscience. But I can go and objectively say God said it's bad that I murdered a bunch of people. But if you're an atheist, you really don't have an objective standard. The question you always got to ask is by what standard. And so anyway, for my business, I want to have standards. I want people to know I have standards. Honestly, I think I'll do business with anybody, but I won't. But if they're easily offended by my Christian position in my company or my Christian name, my name is the name of my company is Charis Technology, and Charis means unmerited favor,
Mm-hmm.
which you know what that is, right?
No. Well, what?
Unmerited favor.
Yeah, it's what we
It's
receive
grace.
from God. Right. Grace.
Grace. So it's
Yes.
Grace Technology. But I figured if I named it Grace Technology, people think I want to sell them Bibles. And anybody who wants a Bible, if you commit to reading it, I'll buy it for you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell it to you. I'll buy it for you. You got to commit to
Yes.
reading it, though.
Yeah. I think that, one important point that you brought up is Christianity is the wellspring of Western society, like
Sure.
Western civilization. That's where we get, the values that we have. And so, like you said, a lot of people have no idea, but that's where it comes from. And because we've been chipping away at that foundation, that's the reason why today our country, our world, but let's just talk about our country, is going so far off. I mean, we are going basically down the drain, and it's because of that. We're chipping away at our foundation, which is Christianity.
Yeah.
When you put that back into the schools, when you put that back, then
Right.
you'll start you'll start seeing, I guess we'll start to see restoration, a revival, maybe. Another thing is that a lot of Christians don't want to tell people about their faith because they don't want to offend them. But the reason they don't want to tell people about their faith is because they don't read the Bible, and they don't know that one of the things that Jesus told us to do was to spread the gospel to every creature.
Yeah.
That is what we are supposed to do as Christians. And so if you don't read the Bible, then you don't know that. Another thing is maybe some Christians just don't believe what they say they believe. That's another problem. And that can go back to us not being in the Word, accepting diluted doctrines, theology from the world. Because just like this ad that just came out for the Super Bowl took something, a little bit of truth, and twisted it, right? That's what they do all day. And if you are not in the Word and you are not reading the Bible and you're not praying, you're just going to accept what you hear. So many people believe that Jesus said, follow your heart. That's not true. Jesus did not say follow your heart. It sounds good, but it's completely opposite to what he said, And so those are some of the things that I find that, if we are going
Jesus
to...
said, the heart is wicked, who can trust it?
Yeah.
But then
The
somebody
heart is wicked, right?
No.
Don't follow your heart.
Yeah. The heart is wicked, who can trust it? I'm going to say Jesus said that, and some Christian's going to push back on me and say, that's Jeremiah in the Old Testament. Well, guess what? Jeremiah was inspired by God. Jesus is God. Period. Done. People, even Christians, if you read just the Gospels and you ignore the rest of the Bible, you get a very warped sense of who Jesus is. You need to read the whole Bible. It's all inspired by Jesus. If you go read in Jude says that it was Jesus who pulled the Israelites out of Egypt. So it was Jesus the pre-incarnate Jesus who Moses spoke to, because Jesus said, no one has seen the Father. Well, who did Moses see in the burning bush? The pre-incarnate Jesus.
Correct.
Because all things are made through him.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's huge. I wanted to promote my pastor's books. He's written 11 books, and he's got a trilogy right here. These 3 books.
What are they called? We can't see them.
This one's called Blood Red Church.
Uh-huh.
And you see 3 churches on there, right? There's a white church. I'm sorry, there's a gray church, a red church, and a blue church.
Uh-huh.
So I think this is a helpful paradigm for people trying to figure out what's going on in the culture and inside of Christianity. So you have red churches. A red church is a faithful, Bible-believing church that's willing to call out Caesar and say, hey, Caesar, you stay in your Romans 13 realm. You're supposed to obey God just like us individuals. Not a lot. There's fewer and fewer red churches out there that are willing to say, be Nathan to David, to stand up, to be Moses to Pharaoh, right? To stand up, to to follow that Daniel 11:32 verse I just said a little while ago. But as people who know their God will stand firm and take action. We have to take action. We got to be involved. So, anyway, the great church is the mysterious one. The blue church is easier to figure out. The blue church is really easy because it's in the last few years, they're all marked with rainbows, and they have female pastors that are usually don't like you to. That are kind of like don't tell me what my gender is. You didn't ask.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so don't assume my gender. I'm a pastor. What anyway? So the great church in the middle, however, is the one that has come up lately as that we're finally been able to identify over the last few years after they're the ones that kind of let all the government tyranny come into our churches and shut down. They're the ones that equivocate. They say things. So there's an organization. Have you ever heard of the Gospel Coalition?
No.
So the Gospel Coalition used to be headed by Tim Keller. He's no longer with us. D.A. Carson runs it now, I think. I think he was very influential in there. They tell their pastors, if your flock, if the people coming to your church are unsure if you're politically left or politically right, you're doing a good job. So they take no stands. They take no stands. A lot of times I've noticed that they also are very much about the gospel, but and the Bible for salvation, but they don't like the Bible for everyday life, for applying it to your life, and they don't want to take committed stands to whether or not this is a sin or that's a sin.
Right. They never talk about hell either.
Don't need to talk about hell. Don't want to take on any controversial issues. I know of a great church where they did a I listened to the whole thing, 4 or 5 weeks talking about transgenderism, and they never addressed pronouns. How do you do that?
Yeah.
That is such a big thing. I mean, so anyway, there's this is like a trilogy of cultural stuff. My pastor Jeff Cleaver, he wrote the first one was Woke Free Church.
Mm-hmm.
That was addressing a book called Woke Free Church. I mean, Woke Church. There was a book called Woke Church, and this is his response. Eric Mason wrote that book. You familiar with that one?
No.
Yeah. So anyway, it's that's what we're trying to do is tear down high places in our podcast that we're airing once a week, and we got a bunch of great ideas. We're going to try and promote red churches in New Jersey. We may even have an awards banquet for red churches in New Jersey. We're trying to stay local and just build up the area. Not trying to be number one guys on YouTube or anything like that. But we're trying to encourage some great churches to be bolder and speak truth.
Yeah.
And red churches. And we want everyone to be bolder because we got a lot of bad bills going on in New Jersey. One of the things, we got a bill, it's called the Freedom to Read Act. That sounds like a good bill, right?
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it.
Have you noticed that the bills that that these politicians put through, whatever they say it is, it's usually like the exact opposite?
Yeah.
So what this bill does is, among other things, does some other nasty things. It gives librarians and teachers an exemption from a law. That law says that if you distribute pornography to children, it's a criminal offense.
Yeah.
But this bill will exempt teachers and librarians from doing so that they can do what? Distribute pornography, obviously. Why else would you exempt them from it?
Right.
How
wow.
How
that's yeah, it's insane what's happening. We need to be, one thing that I find is we need to be able to identify these red churches, which has nothing to do with being, I guess, a political affiliation, maybe not, but definitely not on the left. But as you describe them, churches that are alive, that they follow the Bible, that are that are biblical, that they teach the Bible, and that are, what else did you say? They are
willing to call out Caesar.
Willing to call out Caesar. Yeah. Like, for example, during the pandemic, didn't close, etc.
Right.
I find that one big problem might be that there are so many Christians in these gray churches.
So many.
And they don't even know, and they don't know it. And one thing that I worry about is, for example, I do soul winning. I go talk to people because I do spread the gospel. But I wonder about the people who get saved. And like myself, I was saved in 2020 on my own, but I didn't really know where to go. At least I had a level of awareness that there was something wrong with a church, and that I didn't want to end up in a church like the ones you described. And I would visit churches, and it felt dead, or it felt like a Broadway show with a motivational message, or there was just something. I'm like, I couldn't find a church for 3.5 years. But when I finally went to the church that I'm in now, last November, I walked in and I just knew that was the church, and I was not wrong. I found it, and it is a red hot scarlet red church. Okay. Scarlet red church. And it's been around for 30 years. And I've lived here for 16 years and never knew about it.
Wow.
So, I think an important thing is, as people start coming into the kingdom, to be able to direct them to these churches, because they can end up in a blue church or a gray church, especially for baby Christians. That will kill their faith right there.
It will. And they become enmeshed with the culture.
Yes.
They accept everything the culture says because they're hearing it from the pulpit. They're hearing it on the nightly news. And the nightly news is addictive.
Yeah.
Right. They just, they suck you in, and they tell these tales, and they spin them. So it's a problem. But hey, we've had 2 other revivals in this country, and we can have a third.
And we're going to have a third. That is for sure.
Hey, listen, our job's not to actually even make it happen, but just to be faithful servants. Like you said, you talked about Matthew 28, the Great Commission, and we do. We need to go out and make disciples. Not make friends, not make people who we talk nicely to and then say goodbye, but we make disciples. Disciples are students. We need to teach people. We need to walk them through the scriptures. And as we walk them through the scriptures, what happens? We're blessed. Nothing I've found to be more true than the more you give, the more you get. And it's not material gain, it's spiritual gain. That's where people get that wrong. They think that their gain is going to be material goods, right? So you've got those people too. You got some very blood red churches that are all about prosperity gospel, and I'm gonna put more in the bucket, and I'm gonna get more out. It's just doesn't work that way, But it doesn't matter. It's not material gain that we need. It's spiritual gain. We are the wealthiest. We're so wealthy. Our poor people are wealthy. It's ridiculous. Our poorest of our poor. And I go down our poor area around here is called Camden, New Jersey. It's right across the river from Philadelphia. And I've been in some poor houses. And, they're nothing like – I've never been on a missions trip. But, there's towns and other places and where, the whole town shares a single water spigot in Central America. No wonder those people are trying to get up here. They just want clean water.
That's why I think that it's harder to spread the gospel here for people to accept it because we've been way too comfortable. I always hear from people who have been to Central America, Africa, that they are much more spiritually awake over there than we are here, because in the West, we just have it too good. And, we are too... So your treasure is where your heart is. And a lot of our heart is in our treasure and our money, and so as long as, that remains that way, it is hard. I noticed that it is even harder to talk about the gospel with people who are very well off. And it doesn't mean that they are, any different than anyone else. It just means that, it's not money that's evil. It's the love of money.
Yep.
And so I think that's another thing. I think preaching so I'm one to believe that, yeah, it's important to go out and spread the gospel to other countries, but wow, we have a lot of work to do right here in this country. As a person who will approach people on the street and talk to them about the gospel, I will tell you, it tends to be very hard, you know? And so there's a lot of work here, and but there are a lot of people out there that are very hungry for the gospel, and there are just not enough people out there. Like the Bible says, the laborers, right? There's a large harvest, but not enough people to do the work.
We need to fund we need an entire Christian economy. We need Christian businesses to encourage and give people a safe, the left talks about a safe places. We need safe work environments. We need safe work environments for Christians who want to be faithful to God. And we need to be able to promote the Christian work ethic as of value to other companies.
Yes.
Right? And, unfortunately, that means you're not going to get every deal if you're promoting yourself in that way. You're going to have to take some on the chin, and that's okay. I've started an initiative on my company, and I haven't really gotten any takers yet. So, I've got my toll-free number down here below. If you see it, I think you see it. You see it?
Yeah. I mean, I think your name is covering it, but 1-800.
Is it? So
it might be. Say it. What is it?
888-58 Karis. I can actually move it.
Karis with an X. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I can see it now. For sure.
Yeah.
And it's important to normalize our faith in the environment, normalize it in the marketplace, because I think that is where there is a big part of the harvest in the marketplace. Think about it. A lot of people in the marketplace if they're unbelievers or they don't know anything, they haven't heard the gospel, they're probably not going to walk into church. So in our interactions with other people, those are our opportunities to open up, or at least make it known, or have some type of way of bringing up the subject and letting people know that we are followers of Jesus Christ, not just by what we say, but also by the way we behave, because that's another thing. A lot of people will use the label of Christianity and then do some dirty stuff. So,
yeah. So what I'm hoping to do, Karis is a technology broker. We're actually a supplier agnostic technology procurement service. So we help people purchase technology, kind of a little bit different than buying it. Mm-hmm. It's a program where we create instant ROI, and we prevent loss from auto renewals, and we give people in their technology and purchasing departments 90% of the time it usually takes them to get the stuff done. We get that time back to them. We're offering to Christian nonprofits up to 25% of what we make on these deals, and I don't normally say how much, but it can be a big number depending on the things we do. We do everything from internet circuits and phone systems, all the way up to virtual chief information security officer work. So, and everything in between, from a cloud connectivity and cybersecurity perspective, and AI. AI is sprinkled over everything now. You can't even get away from it.
You can't get away from it.
And that's one of the things everybody's talking about. AI. What do I do with AI? We can help you with the research. We don't charge anything for that. We get paid we either get paid by the people that are the providers, or we get paid by the amount of money that we save people off of their current bills when we negotiate that for them. We actually act as a fiduciary. So that people that do hire us, they value our moral character, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to act as a fiduciary for them. So what I'd really love to do is find some nonprofits, not churches, but parachurch organizations, mm-hmm. and help them raise money to build the body of Christ, right? And certainly I want to be more and more generous. Like my brother Wayne, who you had on.
Wayne Wagner?
Yeah. So that guy, he knows how to fundraise for people.
Oh yeah.
He knows how to, he helps wealthy Christians really make a mark on the kingdom, because it does take resources, but God's got that. We don't, but we really do have to focus on helping people make money and be culturally relevant, making money to not for the sake of living more comfortably, but for building the kingdom, right?
For building the kingdom,
doing
right?
Kingdom work. There's been a lot of faithful Christians that came before us that got us to where we are. I really never try to quote anyone on the left, because I do believe that capitalism is a biblical idea. There's no private property rights without the Ten Commandments telling us not to steal, and the whole law of Moses just protects property, and the government's not supposed to have any say in that. So I think it's culturally relevant. We gotta go and influence the culture and bless people.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can't do that without resources. And a lot of people like, oh, well, the church makes this money and you guys collect money. Why don't you do this, do that, and some people and other Christians think that we shouldn't have anything, that we should just be poor and just have, and it's not true. You need resources because even though we're not of this world, we live in this world. So you need resources to be able to spread the gospel and build God's kingdom on earth. So for sure, it's not about not being rich. You could be a gazillionaire and be a devout Christian and be blessed by God. It's not about that.
We have to live differently. We have to get rid of our debt, right? We have too much debt.
That's in the Bible. Owe to no one, but love them, or something like that. I'm learning that verse.
And a lot of times when a new Christian comes into your church, you should find out who's discipling you, right? Who's discipling you? If nobody's discipling them, then God put you right there to start discipling them, right?
Yeah.
You can disciple more than one person at a time. You don't need that. It doesn't have to all be all one-on-one stuff. You can meet people on a Saturday at a coffee shop and open up your Bible and just go. And even if you've only been a Christian a few years, like you, look at you. You're amazing.
Yeah. I have people approaching me on social media wanting to know more and, and get to know more about the Bible and stuff like that. So there are many ways to do it.
My ex-wife's grandfather used to fall asleep in his Bible every night. I'm like, what's that guy doing? Hasn't he read it enough?
Every time you read it, you find something new.
He I can't wait to see him in heaven. He's going to be upset with my ex-wife, though.
He might be. Be.
But anyway.
So how can people reach you? Are you on LinkedIn? Is the best place to find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Joseph Gormley, Charis Technology, charis.io, charistechnology.com. The email's info@charis.io. The website's charistechnology.com. Charis is the root word in charismatic. It's the root word in Eucharist. It means unmerited favor or grace, and we love grace. And I want all my customers to have unmerited favor, right?
Unmerited favor, yes. I had a lot of unmerited favor for sure. God brought me here from where I was to where I am. I wake up every day and be like, wow, how did it last this long? And oh my gosh, I could have been gone a long time ago. And I'm just, amazed. And I'm thankful to Jesus every day for that unmerited favor that I have received.
I'm grateful that I could be on your podcast. I'm grateful that you would consider me for it. It's an honor, Francine. I pray for a blessing for you.
Yes, you're my new bud. You're one of my best virtual buddies out there.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and I want to thank you for being here. And for all the listeners, if you're a Christian CEO, a kingdom business owner, and you're seeking to authentically integrate your faith and your business through your personal brand, we can help you by creating social content for the purpose of not just talking about your business, but also to spread the gospel, using your influence to spread the gospel on social media, because we don't all have to go to Africa on a mission if you can, or you don't have to stand on the street corner necessarily, but you do need to find a way to spread the gospel. And one of the creative ways of doing that can be social media in addition to whatever else you're doing, but it's important to do it. So I want to thank Joseph for being here today. And God bless you, Joseph, and good luck with this new podcast.
Hey, New Jersey needs missionaries too. So before you go to Africa, come to New Jersey. We got plenty of work.
New Jersey and New York, those are tough places, but God is moving everywhere. So it's happening. So to all my listeners, join in. If you are, a newer Christian, don't be intimidated. I'm a new Christian, but once you start reading the Bible and praying, God just starts to convict you and opening up so many doors for you. So I would encourage you to get out there and spread the gospel. And if you don't know how to do it and you're not sure what I'm talking about, just go ahead and email me at hello@francineSinclair.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there, on Facebook. And thank you for listening. And we'll be back next Tuesday with another guest here on The Influential Christian Entrepreneur. God bless and take care. Bye.
Bye.
If you're a Christian business leader or executive, I invite you to work with me to create a faith-driven personal brand on LinkedIn that will empower you to navigate the intersection between faith and business. Feel free to contact me directly at hello@francineSinclair.com. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to follow me, Francine Sinclair, on Facebook or LinkedIn. See you next week for a new episode.